environment overview and scrutiny panel. Could the teams be turned off because I can just hear myself talking, which I know isn't a great voice anyway, so thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda is announcements and the evacuation procedure. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside Lloyd's Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to member of staff. Could all mobile phones be turned off or set to silent? And also just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded onto Council's YouTube page probably tomorrow. Unfortunately, the live streaming is not working this evening. Item number 2 is to receive any apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Pandair and also Councillor Beetham, who's been substituted by Councillor Hartshaw. Are there any other apologies that members would like to declare? No? Okay, so those 2 could be minuted. Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 23rd of November 2023. I've looked at those minutes and I believe them to be a true and accurate record of what happened, so I'm happy to propose those if they have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Hardison. Does any member wish to speak to the minutes? I see no indication, so go to the vote. So all those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Item number 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that members would like to declare? Councillor Hartshaw.
Thank you, Chair. As it is a last-minute substitution, my interests are not listed in the printed agenda, but they are available on the website.
Thank you. Any other declarations? No? Okay, so we'll move to item number 5, which is public consultation. I've been made aware of 2 members of the public who wish to speak this evening. Mrs. Michelle Kondakor on items 7, 8 and 9, and also on item 7 I have Elisa Novak, who I don't believe to be present. Ms. Kondakor, that is right, 7, 8, 9. Thank you. Okay. So, moving on to item 6, questions to Cabinet. We have Councillor Golby, Deputy Leader of the Council, and Councillor Guthridge, who is Cabinet Member for Health and Environment, present this evening. Are there any questions? Can we start first with Councillor Golby, if that's okay? Councillor Kondakor.
Chair, is there any particular reason for that? I've already put my question to Councillor Guthridge first.
Well, we normally just take one Cabinet Member first and then go on to the next.
Okay, I'll carry on. My first question is about the housing budget and the medium-term housing plan. We had a forward plan updated today when the housing strategy slipped back from March to June. So your policy of measuring twice and cut once is taking an awfully long while. So can we have an indication of what's happening with the housing strategy and the business case, obviously, that goes alongside that? Thank you.
Councillor Golby.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the strategy of measuring twice and cutting once does take quite a while. And I've been very open in this council about when we've been looking into our everything that's going on in housing, everything that's going on in the finance of housing, we are finding historic things that need correcting. And before those things are corrected, we then have to we have to sort those out before we can move on. I cannot and will not put a strategy together until I have all the information that I am comfortable with in order to build a long-term sustainable plan for the housing, the social housing in this borough. And I don't think that should be a bone of contention. I think it's actually prudent, which wasn't done previously. We know it wasn't done previously because we found out all the finances for the houses that were, we've had to refinance some of the stock. We brought all that information to the council. It's in the public domain, and it will take as long as it takes for us to get a plan together that is thorough, fully funded and sustainable.
Thank you, Councillor Goldby. Councillor Kondakor, I see you've indicated.
Yeah, following up on that, we've got lots of issues that need sorting in a fairly short while. You keep blaming the last administration, but you've been in charge for 3 years now. So is there interim plans going on as to what to do until you make up your mind, or your successor makes up their mind what's going on? You've been in charge 3 years. We've got hundreds and hundreds of empty garages. We've got housing projects that need some idea of where they're going. We need more housing. So is there any interim measures in place until you produce your plan?
Councillor Goldby.
The interim measures are as have been previously. There is no change to what we've already put out there in previous strategies from last year. That is the interim measure, and you keep going on about the garages, and I keep telling you about the garages, and you keep going on about housing, and I keep telling you about housing. This is literally a circular conversation, and I've told you time and time again, you keep asking the same questions, you will get the same answer. I am not going to budge on this. And if you think that's irresponsible, if you think being fiscally responsible to be able to put a sustainable and long-term plan together, if you think that's irresponsible, I don't. I think that's what has been needed to happen for a long time. And yeah, we've been in charge for 3 years, and the amount of stuff we've had to unpick in those 3 years is unbelievable. I have said publicly, and more than once, had we not taken over this council when we did, we would be bankrupt. 100% convinced this council would have gone bankrupt had we not taken over and taken some of the interim measures that we've done to change the financial direction. And if you want to carry on with that conversation, take it to the Finance Overview Scrutiny Committee. But as far as housing is concerned, until I am satisfied that I have a way forward that is fully fundable and sustainable, we won't be moving forward. I don't think that's an issue.
I'm going to allow one more on this subject, and then I'd like to move on. Councillor Kondakor.
In the paperwork we've got today, we've got a nice set of financial positions for the general fund on page 87. The financial position of the housing revenue account is impossible to unpick. In the paperwork for the various bits of report, at one stage you've got, I think it's £8.9 billion worth of expenditure in Q2 on one of the pages, page 95. The figures aren't very consistent and impossible to follow. Can you provide members a table similar to the one for the revenue account so that we can see the housing position we're in at the moment? Because I know the 9.8 billion is actually 9.8 million, but that is still a silly number. So on page 95, if you find it, Chair, I say all the numbers we've got in this make sense for the revenue of the general fund, but all the housing figures are just gobbledygook.
Just before Councillor Goldby responds, where does it say that that's miscellaneous expenditure? It doesn't say that, does it, on page 95?
On page 95, it says HRA total, and it's got budget, £250 million, which I think is wrong. Second quarter spending, £8.9 billion.
But it's not miscellaneous expenditure, is it?
I never said miscellaneous.
Okay. Councillor Goldby, I'm going to
I'd just like a nice table of what the position is.
On that point.
I don't think it's billion, so let's just put that to bed. It's quite clearly not billion. If it was, then we'd be all right, wouldn't we? I mean, all I can say is welcome to my world, mate, because this is what I've been dealing with for the last 3 years, and it's unpicking. It's unpicking stuff. If you want a table that's different, put a request in through the chair can sort that out. But, you're misleading in what you're saying there. I don't really know how to answer that.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to my question, unless there's any other questions from the panel. I'd like to move on to my question to Councillor Goldby, which is about right to buy, which is a policy that I absolutely support, and I think it's important that we try and get people onto the property ladder. As per the policy of right to buy, when we sell a property, we retain a receipt. But under normal circumstances, we only retain a small percentage of that. Over the last 2 years, councils have been able to temporarily retain 100% of that receipt, but unfortunately that is coming to an end. Would you, on behalf of the council, consider writing to the Secretary of State to request that 100% right to buy receipts is maintained so that we have the financial ability in our HRA to continue building more social housing?
It's actually a really good point, and yeah, I will. I haven't got a problem with that because the 100% receipts of right to buy is a big help when we sell properties. And right to buy is a big help to people that are buying properties who maybe not ordinarily or wouldn't ordinarily be able to afford the house prices that we've got currently. So yeah, I'd be happy to write to the Secretary of State on that.
Thank you. I think we're going to move next to Councillor Gutteridge. Are there any questions for Councillor Gutteridge? Councillor Kondakor.
Thank you, Chair. In the paperwork, it mentioned how much or how tiny amount we're spending on environmental sustainability, and that we're underspending that by 15,000. We also have all the cycling projects stalled in Nuneaton and Bedworth, and last year the flood alleviation project for Camp Hill was sabotaged and scrapped, with the money being reallocated, as is the cycling money being reallocated to other stuff. Considering the floods on the 2nd of January, and how are we getting on with the Warwickshire climate change committees you go to, in terms of getting some decent mitigation funding for the Nuneaton and Bedworth, and particularly for the flooding, because we were due quite significant flood alleviation works. We were due quite significant cycle improvements, and Warwickshire is slowly moving ahead, and there's obviously this climate change meeting you go to, hopefully. Where are we with getting these adaptations in Nuneaton and Bedworth?
Thank you, Councillor Kondakor, for the question, or many questions. Yes, I have attended the Climate Change Committee, and we are looking at getting a substantial grant for the EV chargers in the borough, which I am working with county, and it will be many chargers put across the centre of both towns. Going back to the flood alleviation system, I believe that is county councils. So that's thank you.
We did have a long discussion last time, Councillor Kondakor, about who's got responsibility for flooding, and it's not, I don't see it as a difficult subject, so can we try and steer on to something else?
Chair, we are a member of a partnership about climate change. EV charging points will help rich people. Poor people will use cycle lanes, they'll want their houses not flooded. We are not getting our share of the climate change mitigation funding. We're not getting our share of the flood alleviation projects. And as we've got a cabinet member who sits on these committees and attends them, he should be shouting, hopefully, to get some of the flood alleviation projects. Not just for my part of the borough, but also in Bedworth Woodlands. There are areas where a lot more work needs doing on maintenance and mitigation to cope with an increasingly wet winters. So I think it is fair to ask Councillor Gutteridge what's happening about the funding for flood alleviation. I know we don't fund it, but we are a planning authority and we attend these meetings, hopefully standing up for our borough and the residents who are at risk from flooding.
Councillor Gutteridge, if you've got one more point that you wish to make.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't know whether he understands, but we have Warwickshire County Council who have their side, which is flood alleviation, and there's Nuneaton and Bedworth. We don't have that. Right, going back to your cycle lanes, yes, we are looking at cycle lanes. In fact, at this present time, we have a new cycle lane in a park not far from yourselves, which when we are ready to open it, we will open it. So there is a new cycle lane going in there in the parks. And we are looking to put cycle lanes across most of our parks eventually when I have the funding.
Are there any further questions of Councillor Gutteridge? No. Okay, my only question that I've got, Councillor Guthrie, is a very arcane subject around drainage ditches. Now, I know that in the vast majority of cases we're not responsible for the maintenance of them, but is the Parks Department putting any pressure on the Environment Agency and also Warwickshire County Council, where they hold responsibility to clear out drainage ditches, some of which haven't been maintained for quite some time now?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are putting pressure on the Environment Agency to clean out their ditches, but probably a lot of the ditches that you refer to are probably owned by the County Council, and we are putting pressure on the County Council. And where we have problems with our ditches, we look at cleaning them. In fact, we only just cleaned out a ditch last year that was, well, back end of last year, which was very severe, and we will keep them clean where we can, and when we've got costs effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Kondakor, you've already come in on this item.
I just want to ask a supplementary on
Is
that.
it completely separate? Is it a completely separate subject?
No, it's about the drainage of our cemeteries.
Okay, I'll allow that. Then I want to move on.
Thank you, Chair. One of the areas, obviously, in your remit is the cemeteries, but obviously you get water coming on from other land. Did we have a better drainage of our cemeteries during the 2nd of January flooding? Because I didn't get any reports, so hopefully that is getting better. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a problem in certain cemeteries with drainage, and in fact we have spoken with the landowner who adjoins us where the water is coming from. In fact, we've also had a meeting with our MP and briefed him about it, and we are looking at taking this further. He's asking questions down at Westminster about certain areas that we are having problems with water.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to move on now to our next item, which is item 7, and I'm pleased that we've got Councillor Golby. Did you?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, apologies. You said you had an announcement, didn't you? And sorry, I did say you could. I apologise. Yes.
It's just to share a bit of good news about the communities team, or should I say our now award-winning communities team. So a few members of my team last week won awards, and it's just, I'd like to announce what they won for and just to congratulate them, because they put in an enormous amount of effort, and it's not always recognisable by people in the council, but it's certainly deserves due recognition. So Abu Malik, who's my head of communities, he received an award for a range of projects which have helped deliver post-COVID re-engagement for some communities, and they include community cohesion events across the borough, domestic violence engagements, liaising with the S&T and the PCC's office. So he has won awards for engaging in all of those activities. And then we've got Michelle Clark and Rowena Musgrave also at the same ceremony won awards for pulling together a big partnership working piece with our local S&T, with in relation to Up Plenty, which was over Christmas, which was to tackle loneliness and isolation. They made it a success by proactively finding and bringing in new partners from the NHS hospital, from the release team at the hospital. So finding residents that needed assistance through the release team at the hospital, through Age UK, through external housing companies to us and our own housing teams, Saints and the community cafes, warm hubs and local churches, and also Carver. And then they were referring those people on to the S&T to get a face-to-face visit from S&T, and then Christmas cards and contact. So they've done a really good job over the last 12 months, and it's been, you know, we've had some big, significant things going on in the town with the Knife Angel, and I'm really pleased to say that we've got a fantastic working relationship with our external partners and particularly our SNT teams. So they deserve due congratulations for all the work that they're doing, which a lot of it goes unseen, like I say, because a lot of people don't know what they do. You will only find out what they do if you need them, and it's getting to that point. But yeah, a big congratulations to the team on that.
Thank you, Councillor Colby. Thank you very much. Is it an announcement under this item? Yeah.
Can I just follow on from what Councillor Golby said about the Knife Angel? I'd like to just say that we had the most hits in total in the year on our Facebook page, the Council's Facebook page, was the Knife Angel.
Thank you, Councillor Goodrich. Moving on to item 7, we have representatives from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service with us this evening to discuss their new delivery model. So I'm very pleased that we've got Chief Fire Officer Brooke and also Councillor Andy Crump, who's the Cabinet Member for Fire Services on Warwickshire County Council. I'm going to ask the Chief Fire Officer to give us a brief update on what the plans are. I'm then going to allow our public speakers to come in and then members. I'll also allow Councillor Crump to come in as well after yourself if you speak.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the welcome here tonight. So just give you a really quick overview of what the proposed changes are and why we're making those changes. So first of all, just to outline some key challenges that Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service is facing and the reason we're making these changes or proposing to make these changes. Firstly, 80% of our activity happens between the hours of 8 in the morning and 10 at night, and yet we have the least fire engines available during that time period. So what we're trying to do through these proposals is put fire engines available when we have most of our activity, which is between 8 in the morning and 10 at night, and that's 80% of our activity. The second challenge we're facing is we have on-call firefighters who are brilliant. And what they are, on-call firefighters, are people who, it's not their primary job, they do it in their own time. We pay them for it, they're highly skilled, they're brilliant people, and they sometimes do up to 120 hours on call and have to stay within 5 minutes of the fire station to respond to emergencies. We're finding it more and more difficult to recruit, to attract and to retain people in that model. And our on-call fire engine availability has gone from 90% 5 years ago down to 40% today. So a significant reduction. So you look at that fire engine, that fire station, it may appear to be available, but over 60% of the time it's not available. And in the day, when our risk is highest, our availability is at 19%. So 80% of the time those fire engines are not available. Our third challenge is response times. So we make a commitment to our communities that we'll get to life and property incidents within 10 minutes on 75% of occasions. We haven't met that response standard for 5 years. We want to be really open and transparent with our communities and look at how we can best configure our resources to get to incidents as quickly as we possibly can. But be honest that we can't do that in 10 minutes on every occasion in every area of Warwickshire. And then finally, some of our shift systems have been challenged in other parts of the country that we operate in Warwickshire, and therefore they've been legally challenged, and the Fire and Rescue Services where that's happened, they've lost that legal challenge. So we know that we're at risk in that space, so we need to align some of our shift systems to more nationally recognised systems of work. So in this part of Warwickshire, the resource configuration is designed to have the best possible impact and response to the communities. And when we look at that, we look at Coleshill, Atherstone, Nuneaton, Bedworth as a whole, and look at the resource configuration across that area, because we're here to serve the whole of Warwickshire, not just one area, but we want to try to provide the very best service we can to the residents of Nuneaton as well. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Fire, so are you able to give us a brief breakdown of what the compliance changes are going to be by station, specifically for Nuneaton and Bedworth? I appreciate Atherstone and Coleshill does come into this as well. But
yeah, sure, no problem at all. So Nuneaton is currently 2 24/7 appliances. Under the proposals, that goes to 1 24/7 fire engine. Bedworth is currently an on-call fire appliance station. That goes into a fire station which will be staffed between the hours of 8 in the morning and 10 at night. So there'll be a dedicated cruise there on that station between 8 in the morning and 10 at night. Coleshill goes from where it's currently available in the day, whole time, but at night it's on call. It goes to being available 24/7, and Atherstone is currently available in the day, on call at night, and that goes to available 24/7.
So Bedworth, Coleshill and Atherstone will retain one appliance.
That's right, they're one appliance currently, and they retain one appliance.
Okay.
But they've been on call at night previously, which isn't always available.
No, sure. And are you able to tell me, anecdotally, before we go on to public speakers, just so I can inform the debate a bit, if there's a road traffic incident on the M6, it's likely that Warwickshire will have to respond to that, and majority of the time it would normally be Bedworth who would respond to that. Am I correct in saying that?
Not quite, because Bedworth availability is less than 50%, so most of the time, less than 50% of the time it's available. In the day, we have the most incidents on the motorway. In other areas, it's much less than that, probably less than 30% availability. So we currently move resources about on a day-by-day basis. Nuneaton's second appliance will roam and go across into that area. So no, it's not correct to say that Bedworth will respond to most of those incidents. Nuneaton will as well.
Sure. Okay, Mrs. Kondakor, you wanted to speak on this item, so please do go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, there's several sort of situations that I can think of, and the figures that you've given just sort of don't seem to cover it. I'm under the impression that most incidents need 2 fire appliances attending to them. Certainly the ones we've had recently around us, flooding, there were 2 fire appliances came, and there was a fire in Marston Lane, and that was also 2 appliances. So that, in a fire, I believe there needs to be a certain number of crew present members in order to go in to rescue people and things. So I don't know how that all ties in. I understand that there are less incidents at night, but surely they're harder to deal with. I certainly know that if we had a fire in our house, heaven forbid, that if it was in the night, I know how well I sleep, and trying to get me dozy person, and I'm sure most people are the same, people are sleepy, they've not got their proper shoes or anything like that, maybe just a dressing gown, trying to sort of move them around and tell them what to do must be that much more difficult. So how does that all tie in? And also in terms of numbers and things, the density of the population and the increase in population that we've had in Nuneaton and things, and yet we seem to be actually losing, fire appliances when, we've got a hell of a lot of people and growing. And also I know it's not just fire, it's fire and rescue, and we are getting increasing number of floods, and we saw, I think it's the year before last now, the sort of climate change induced wildfires that erupted very, very rapidly. Just on the outskirts of London, wasn't it, near Dagenham, where houses were just engulfed in moments and things. So how would just having one appliance here allow people to respond adequately to those sort of things when it sort of will be happening in lots of places at once? Thank you.
I think Councillor Crump is going to respond to some of those claims. Yeah.
I'll start off with and then Ben will come in. There's some figures as well. A bit of a double act, I'm probably the right man to Ben's probably. Quite a few good points there. I'm glad you mentioned the flooding. So I've got the flooding portfolio at Kent as well, so I'll be able to speak to Kent about drains and gullies and riparian ownership, so I'm more than happy to do that. But you mentioned the flooding and the wildfires, and this is the whole point of having the search teams. So currently we've got 11 full-time pumps plus 12 on call. Invariably, if we're lucky, only 1, maybe 2 of those are available during the day. As we know, the 40 degrees temperatures in 2022 happened between 12 o'clock midday and 6 p.m. Oh, when have we got least availability? We're talking about the flooding as well. We all know that the flood doesn't suddenly materialise out of the water and is there with it needing a 5-minute call. We know that if it rains 50 miles upstream, that's going to come down to certain parts of the county within 2 hours. Therefore, we can move and call these surge or on-call teams back to meet the demand. And no pun intended on this occasion, and I know Councillor Kondakor loves my puns, we literally ran out of pumps during the flood. We didn't have enough availability to meet our demand, trying to call the on-call firefighters back because they weren't available during the day. With this surge team, the 8 pumps, we would be able to bring those back on a phased basis on up to 2-hour recall. So therefore, if we knew these wildfires were taking place or were happening or the floods, we could get our resources back. In terms of the fires we had that temperature, they were wearing PPE, 40-degree heat, and lots of our firefighters were suffering from heat exhaustion. So therefore they needed relieving. So again, they could have been brought back on a face time. So that is some of the issues. About the other thing as well, sometimes we fail if we have to go out. We need to ensure we do enough prevention and protection work. So people have got working fire alarms, smoke alarms, they shut the doors at night, make sure everything's turned off, don't overload plugs. And that's one of the things. When we talk about population increase, newer houses are more likely to be safer than older houses, usually, because they've got built-in smoke alarms, they've got better electrics, they've got newer appliances, they've got built to a better standard, usually, can't say all the time, but usually, and have built-in safety measures as well. So, it doesn't mean to equate more houses means more demand. Because if that was the case throughout the country, the population has increased significantly, we would have needed more fire and rescue services. So hopefully that's answered some of the points, and then Ben will be answered on this.
Very quick, just a couple of points, just around the number of incidents that require 2 fire engines. So 89% of our incidents are not life and property and only require 1 fire plant, so it's actually a small number of incidents that require. Thankfully, house fires are reducing, not increasing. In relation to at night, 68% of fatalities actually happen in the day, not at night, so we need to change that. We have less fires at night. And then just want to say, this new resource configuration for this area of the county improves response times to life and property incidents by 35 seconds.
Thank you very much. We did have another public speaker, but that individual hasn't attended, so we're going to move straight on to members. Are there any members who have any points they would like to raise? Councillor Shines.
Hi, thanks for that. You've mentioned about you're struggling to retain staff and to get on-call officers. What are you actually, I've got quite a few questions, but start off with that. So what are you actually doing to encourage people to join the fire service? And then once they're in the fire service to actually stay? And what is happening? Is it there any something to the fact that actually resources are being stripped from the fire service, as with others, that people, the fire officers leave? I know you're shaking your head there, Councillor Crump, so if you can just answer sort of like of what you're doing to retain, that'd be great, thanks.
Yeah, I'll do what we've done about recruitment then. So just to be really clear, our whole-time firefighters, we have no challenges there for recruitment. So for every position we try to fill, we probably have nearly 700 applicants. So we do not have an issue, and retention isn't an issue for our whole-time firefighters either. Generally they do 30 or 40 years service with us. We're talking very specifically around on-call firefighters that have to live within 5 minutes of a station and be available within 5 minutes of that station for between 40 hours a week and 120 hours a week. We've had a community engagement officer put in place to try and attract people. We do advertising on social media. We've had a 22-point plan to try and improve that. We've also done some research actually around our communities and the volunteering and the desire to actually do things in people's own time. Now, this isn't a volunteering role, it's a paid role. is becoming very, very challenging. So it's not just us, it's actually reservists for the armed forces. It's lots of areas that's been really challenging, and people just seem to either not be able to afford to live in 5 minutes of our on-call stations, or they are not wanting to dedicate that amount of time. So it's a real struggle for us.
Nothing on the resourcing.
Yes, Councillor, yes.
Yeah. Yes, there's a couple of things on that. We are basically, there will be, if the proposal goes through as is, we are subject to, our minds being changed on things, but, we do meaningful consultation and we want to listen to what our residents are saying. If the proposals stay exactly as they are, there's a £14,000 saving on the total budget of fire and rescue of 24 million. So, a minuscule amount, and I used to work as a council local government for 30 years, and if I got my budgets within 14,000 on a 24 million pound budget, I'd be running up and down and shouting about that. So it's not a saving, it's trying to resource to do where the risk is. And I don't know where you've seen on the news recently, Hereford and Worcestershire, the fire and rescue are taking away 8 pumps from on-call stations, potentially making 43 on-call firefighters redundant, and moving resources from that area to frontline whole time. It's because their demand has changed, and they are also struggling to recruit on-call firefighters.
Councillor Shines.
Okay, so we've also got the hotel that's currently being built, which is one of the bigger developments in the area, and it currently, from what I can gather, has no sprinkler system within it. So if, and it is like a God forbid, something was to happen there, would we be able, with one fire engine, to deal with that, if that was to happen?
So firstly, we can't legislate sprinklers in certain buildings, so it will be being built to building regs. Our fire protection teams will be involved in that, making sure it's got the right escape routes, protected corridors, smoke alarms, all those sort of things. Secondly, if we had a hotel fire, it wouldn't be Nuneaton's appliances now that just deal with it. There'll be resources from all over the county. It's not Nuneaton's fire engines that deal with incidents in Nuneaton. We move fire engines around the county all the time. So if we had an incident that was that significant, we'd be moving resources from all around the county. But across the whole of Warwickshire, we'd also be calling probably support from other fire and rescue services as well. And just to emphasise again, the response time would be quicker for the first appliance, and getting the second appliance from Bedworth would be quick alongside Atherstone and Coleshill, but we'd pull resources from the whole of Warwickshire. So we'd never just deal with that, just with Nuneaton's appliance.
Sorry, but then my thoughts are, so if, God forbid again, there was the fire there, and from what I can gather, I think Councillor Kondakor and Councillor Watkins have been around, and I've had information that says that actually fire service haven't actually been that involved with the hotel. But if we're bringing fire services from across Coleshill, Atherstone, Bedworth, etc., just to deal with one incident here, what then if there was another serious incident somewhere else? I'm sure you can appreciate we actually live here, so for obviously us it's our lives, it's our children's lives, etc. So this is actually quite important to residents. So it really is a case of, if you were then pulling it resources from everywhere else, what about those areas if something was to happen? What cost are you putting on people's lives generally?
We're not putting costs on people's lives at all. As you say, I think I disagree with that totally. If there was a major fire, we have to have resources from different parts of the county and across board to start with. The 2 pumps at Bedworth, or the 2 pumps here, wouldn't be able to deal with that. That's what Mr. Rock was saying. Secondly, the whole point of these proposals is to have resources available on an up to 2 hour callback, but not necessarily a 2 hour callback. It could be less than that. It depends on negotiations with the employee organisations. And that is the whole point of bringing people back in to backfill those other areas if they were needed. So if there was this incident at the hotel, it took about 4 or 5 different pumps from different parts of the county, we would then be able to call back other areas, other search teams, to come back in and backfill where those other pumps have come from. So that's why we're producing extra resources to do so. So currently, as I said, Mr. Brooks is looking to have 12 or 13 pumps available guaranteed during the day. Under this proposal, you could have up to 20.
I think what you're describing is something that already happens on a day-to-day basis. If we had a large fire in Nuneaton, we'd pull the resource out of Nuneaton. That's what we do currently. We have to move resources around Warwickshire on a day-by-day basis based on risk and what's going on. You know, it really is important that, you know, the 2 fire engines that are sat at Nuneaton don't just sit there. We will move them throughout the county to deal with a range of different things on a day-to-day basis, depending where the activity is.
Sorry, I think I might be sort of, maybe I'm being a bit stupid here. I still don't. So you're going to move them around. That's fair enough. That's what you do in business. You put your resources to where it is. I don't see though how removing a fire engine from the Nuneaton is going to increase your ability to tackle accidents, fires, etc. When you could just leave it at Nuneaton as it is now, and then just have it roaming. I don't know why it needs to actually move from Nuneaton.
So what we're doing is reconfiguring our resources to where the risk is. So currently, Bedworth doesn't have much availability there at all. So by moving fire appliances, Atherstone, like I described, that's at night is on call. It won't be anymore. So in this area of the county, covering this area, we've got better distribution of resources that can come in from all different angles into the Nuneaton if that happens as well, which is helpful. So it's the whole resource configuration that's better for this area. If you just look at Nuneaton, it just doesn't work like that. You have to look at where the resource configuration is across the north of the county, and it's better under the new model.
Are there any points, other points, Councillor Shines? No. Okay. Councillor Hartshall.
Thank you, Chair. So I understand that the second full-time appliance from Nuneaton is to be moved to Bedworth. I mean, there is already an appliance there. I'm just assuming it's moving the crew over. So what would happen to the second physical appliance at Nuneaton? Is it going to stand there as an on-call pump, or is it going to be transferred out to Atherstone, Coastal, wherever?
Chief Fire Officer.
Yeah, so it's different reconfiguration. So what we will do is currently we have 23 fire appliances. What this does is takes us to 20. Just very clear, we never have 23 appliances on the run. Our average is 11 or 12 in the day, potentially 15 at night is what we look and feel like. That's our average resource availability. So there are some fire appliances that stand still at the moment. What we're going to do is make sure every single fire station has a fire engine, but Nuneaton will have one fire engine, and that will be 24/7 at Nuneaton.
Any other points, Councillor? Okay, Councillor Kondakor.
Thank you, Chair. I had the privilege of going on Monday night to hear a lot of questions.
We had the privilege to get to Kondakor as well.
And the very last question you ducked and didn't answer, and your mind has prevented being answered, which I thought was a very good question about breathing apparatus policy. So we have 4 on a crew on a fire engine, and when you arrive, you need, I'm told, 5 to safely do a breathing apparatus entry into a house, etc. And the chap there, I assume had some fire experience from the way he talked, was concerned about what your policies were in terms of putting the firemen at risk and then going into something against rules, etc. And the big thing we lose in Nuneaton with these changes is the second appliance attending time. The fire station is just there, we get a fire engine very quickly. The second one, which provides the extra crew, if they're coming from Atherstone in the morning rush hour, or up from Bedworth in the morning rush hour, would be a considerable delay. So we're very concerned about that second fire engine in the meeting, and we want to know what's happening with this breathing apparatus policy and how we mitigate for that. I mean, one solution is to have 5 crew on rather than 4, which I think is what you used to have before the previous cuts. So can you explain what the policy is and how we're going to be safe in our homes?
Yep, so been a firefighter now for 26 years, worked some of the busiest fire stations, have been to lots and lots of house fires. The ridership in Warwickshire is we ride at 4. That's currently the situation. People can be at a house park on their own with a crew of 4. There is something within our policies called exceptional circumstances and rapid deployment, where you can deploy when life is at risk, so we can absolutely do that. We'll get a second appliance there as quickly as we possibly can, and under these arrangements we're much more likely, depending where it is, to get there quicker first, to make the first intervention, and in this area you'll get a second appliance very, very quickly.
Councillor Kondakor.
The other impact on the cuts, it effectively lose £1.1 million worth of firefighters. You've got your 2 crews and then all your shifts. So you told me to keep the firemen with about £1.1 million. And that's money lost to the local economy. But those firemen are also doing lots of useful stuff. We've got this integrated scheme for the trail and things. And there's been lots of good stuff the fire service has been doing. So not only do we have the whammy of losing those fire crews to Nuneaton, we also probably have less of the things going on which are beneficial. So I would like a compromise and to have a daytime 12-hour crew and then a 24-hour crew, which is halfway on the money. But yeah, can we seriously look at what we're doing as a compromise, and can you explain what services we lose by only having 1 crew rather than 2?
Just before I allow Councillor Crook to respond to that, just so people at home are watching, these are not cuts. We need to use our language very clearly on this. These are not cuts.
Chair.
It's simply redesigning a delivery of a service to make sure it is where the demand is. Councillor Crook.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that point, yeah. Like I say, you did mention previous cuts that came to Kondakor, and I think that was 2010. Previous cuts implies that these are cuts and they're not. It's resource allocation. What I've got to say is, first of all, when you talk about it's firefighters, not firemen, so I've got it a couple of times. I know it's easy to do, and we all know farming Sam. My children were brought up on farming Sam, so but it's firefighters. We've got to get that point across. I think that's quite a serious point there. But you've also got to acknowledge that these appliances and firefighters are not Nuneaton's fire and rescue. It's Warwickshire Fire and Rescue. I'm responsible, and Mr. Brook is, for the residents of the whole of Warwickshire. So you might see resources being moved around, but they don't belong to you. They belong to Warwickshire, not Nuneaton, not Nuneaton, Bedworth, Coleshill, Southam, my station, at my area. So yeah, it's putting resources to where the risks are at the right time, at the right place. So it's, if we wanted to stay the same, there's one thing we didn't touch upon, is that HMIC FRS, which is His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue, actually was concerned or got an area of improvement on the way we allocated our resources. And they've said we are pleased to see that the services have evaluated its mix of crewing and duty systems, so it will be able to demonstrate how it responds efficiently to risk and incidents. So basically, we've been told by the equivalent of external audit to look at what we're doing and make sure we are providing the best resources at the right time at the right place. The status quo is not acceptable. Even the FRSA, which is the on-call employee body, has said, what they've said, I can't really write it, the status quo is not an option. Swift action and innovative proposals are needed. They are a critic of what we're doing, but they acknowledge that status quo is not an option. And if we've got the availability we had 10 years ago, I wouldn't be coming here. I wouldn't have been stuck in traffic for an hour and 20 minutes and being late, so I do apologise. So yeah, we've got to make sure we use our resources to our best ability and best availability. And like Mr. Brooks says, the on-call firefighters do a great job, but lots of them work during the day and they are not available. And what we're going to do as well is that because of, sometimes if we go out to an incident, we fail, particularly around house fires, because sometimes we can get to house fires and we're too late. And they've got there well within the response time. So as part of this, we're freeing up extra resources, we've got more staff available during the day to do more prevention and protection work. A 13.2% increase in the amount of prevention and protection work in identifying issues, because we all know, was it a stitching time saves 9 and prevention is better than cure.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to allow one more contribution on this item from you, Councillor Kondakor, and then I'd like to move on. Councillor Kondakor.
By my reckoning, you've got 4 people per fire engine. 4 people. There's 2 lots of shifts, so that's 8 to man a fire engine for a day. You've got 2 fire engines, so that's 16. And then they're on 4 on, 4 off, so that's 32. So at the moment we have roughly 32, plus obviously managers and people for covering holidays. 32 people looking after our lives in Nuneaton. The proposals that will go down to 16, which will save you £1.1 million. That saving is being used to solve the problems in other parts of the county, which I totally accept you have. Yeah, the on-call system does need strengthening and replacing in this new model. That's great for those places. Rugby keeps 2 fire engines, Leamington keeps 2 fire engines. Nuneaton goes from 2 to 1. What I would like to ask you to seriously consider, please reply to this, is having effectively 1 full-time crew and 1 12-hour crew. That goes from 32 people to 24 rather than 32 to 16. That would give us more resources in the most fire-affected part of Warwickshire. We get more fires. Our crews are not idle in Nuneaton and Bedworth. The Nuneaton crews, if you look at the call-out rate, 1,300 or so call-outs a year for 2 crews. They're very busy. If you look at Bidford, I think it was 18 call-outs a year. Yeah, we do have an awful lot of fires, so I seriously ask you to look at a crewing model that gives us 2 fire engines, even if one of them is only there for 12 hours a day, because that is something we can build back from. If we lose 16 firefighters, that is catastrophic and we'll never get them back. So I do ask you to consider Nuneaton and consider giving us less of a cut, and I'll keep calling it a cut. Thank you, Kyle.
Before I allow the Chief Fire Officer to respond, I do need to make it clear, as I understand, the borough is not losing the compliance. And I think it's important for people at home to understand that. I'm going to allow the Chief Fire Officer to respond to your points.
Yeah, in the area there will be more fire appliances available and guaranteed to be available. I'm not sure it's actually a question, Councillor, so I don't know what to respond to that really, because it wasn't a question, but feel free to put within the consultation your suggestions, because I think it was a suggestion of how you think we can improve it rather than a question.
It was a question. I wanted 1.5 a crew and then a 12-hour crew.
So I can't answer that now because it's part of the consultation. Feed that into the consultation.
Yeah. Yes, okay. I just want to come on to points myself. First, I'll put these all together. I just wanted, when I was reading through this report and looking at where all our stations are located, etc., obviously Coventry Airport does technically come under Warwickshire, not the West Midlands. I know it's on the boundary, but are we responsible for fire provision at Coventry Airport, and if so, where does that fit into this new model? The second point I wanted to raise it's a general comment, I suppose, around equipment. So we're talking about compliance stuff, but am I right in saying that if there was a bin fire, we wouldn't necessarily send an entire compliance out, would we? We would. I remember we used to have like the converted 4x4 Land Rover Defenders. Do we still have those? And if so, are you able to tell us briefly what the breakdown of those are, locally? And also, again, when I was looking at where our location of stations are, and I know just you obviously mentioned earlier about the retention and recruitment of on-call firefighters. I know that the discussion around where fire stations are located, I know that it can be a very politically contentious thing to discuss. I know it's a very easy subject for people to sort of, hit councillors and politicians over the head with, but I do think we need to have an honest debate about the location of our fire stations in Warwickshire, and perhaps, and I'm not sort of proposing this because I'm not an expert in this, but have we looked at locations like the Bermuda Industrial Estate as potential locations? You know, if you know, especially given its proximity to the motorways, etc., and given it's a central part of the borough. So if you could sort of touch on those points, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a few points then. So in relation to the airport, so the airport, depending on the size of the aeroplanes that are coming, have to provide their own fire and rescue service. We support them, absolutely do support them, but it depends on the size of their. So for Coventry Airport, they have a fire and rescue service capability there. We support them in that though, so we absolutely will do that. Thankfully, it's a fairly low risk. We don't very often have aircraft coming in, but we absolutely can deal with that. It's not just airport that do that, so Defence Munitions Clinton have their own defence fire and rescue service as well. Really important to say we also assess all new risks across Warwickshire, so all of our firefighters go out and assess new risks alongside our prevention and protection team, so it's part of what we do. In relation to small fires in our fleet and how the fleet is made up, it's mainly made up of full fire appliances, but what we do is if we can't get the full crewing level, so we can only have 3 people on a fire appliance, we'll still mobilise that fire appliance, but only to small fires. But generally, across Warwickshire, because of our geography, we can't have a specialist resource for this and a specialist resource for that. One vehicle that can respond to everything absolutely makes sense. We do have some specialist capabilities, so we've got a specialist road traffic collision capability, we've got special animal rescue capability, we've got a specialist flood rescue capability within Warwickshire, so we have got a number of specialist vehicles, but the majority of our fleet are made up of the fire appliances that are traditionally there. In relation to new buildings, new risks, under the National Framework Document for Fire and Rescue Services in England, we have to assess risk on a regular basis. So we do that every 3 years maximum. We usually actually do it on an annual basis. So we do review and look at risk. And I really want to emphasise the fact that when we review risk again, it might have changed. We might need to move fire appliances again around Warwickshire. That needs to be starting to be in the thinking of our communities, that we're not a static service where this is exactly where a resource will be. Much like the ambulance, much like the police, we need to be much more dynamic in how we use our resources based on risk. So if risk changes, we'll look at that and we'll move fire appliances around again.
Councillor Cook, you want to come in as well?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you. We work on a Blue Light collaboration partnership with the police, the occasionally Western Ambulance and a few other partners as well. As we all know, if we could have a clean map of and start again with our fire stations, lots of them wouldn't be where they are today, particularly in the south. And some of those are unsustainable. So we are trying to see where the best locations are. We are, again, trying to share resources as well, which makes sense. And that. And we see some of the fire stations have had equipment taken from them, particularly in the south, been broken in because the criminals have been able to use the equipment for nefarious purposes. But we are again trying to make those secure and working with our partners. So we are looking at exploring different locations, and that was one of them. And it depends also on how developments happen, big builds, etc., and whether things can be moved around and etc. It's Warwickshire County Council's property people involved as well in terms of looking at locations. But you're right, half the stations we've got now wouldn't be there if we could redesign them, because the risk has changed. Obviously, even the M40 wasn't built until late 80s, wasn't it? Early 90s. And I think we've got the most motorways in Warwickshire throughout the whole of the West Midlands. So, and we are ahead. But even though they're supposed to be one of the safer, best roads of transport, we still have incidents, and sometimes they can be really serious. So, yes, thank you for the question.
Okay, I'm going to bring this item to a close. Obviously, I hope that members, if they have concerns or suggestions or proposals, feed those into the consultation. And as the Chief Fire Officer sort of indicated, highlighted, that these things are always under review. If demand changes, we have to look at where resources go, and if this system, this model doesn't work, I'm confident that Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service will just accept that, move on and change and adapt. And, but for me, my view on these matters has always been that we have to make sure that the resources are where the demand lies, and at the end of the day it's our firefighters on the ground who are the experts in this subject area, and if this is the model that they believe will work, I think we need to be seen to support them. So on that note, I'm going to move on. Chief Fire Officer, thank you very much for your attendance, and Councillor Crum, thank you for attending as well. And we hope that you get lots of responses to the consultation to go through in due course. Thank you. You can stay for the rest of the meeting though.